It is 3 a.m., and you are staring at the ceiling because that fluttering in the center of your chest feels like a trapped bird pecking at your ribs. This isn't just one bad night. This heavy, oily dread has been tightening its grip for months, making every breath feel like a struggle. You've tried the antacids, the extra pillows, and those herbal teas that only leave a bitter, metallic taste on your tongue. What if that thumping in your breastbone isn't an enemy, but a messenger screaming a warning about a hidden danger in your own home? In the next few minutes, you will finally understand exactly what is happening to you. My name is Arthur Sterling Vance, and at 71 years old, I am a man built from the steel and blueprints of the past. For 4 decades, I commanded the construction of the Sterling Towers, believing a man's handshake was his most sacred bond. However, since my beloved Eleanor died 24 months ago from a sudden stroke, my world has shrunk to the silence of this echoing estate. Every morning at 5, I still brew 2 cups of dark coffee, placing one beside her silver-framed photograph. I carry her old garden shears in my pocket like a heavy relic, a constant sensory anchor to the life we built before the house became a tomb of memories and unwashed porcelain. My daughter, Chloe Vance, is my only bridge to reality, using her MBA efficiency to manage the legacy I am now too weary to carry alone. I also harbor the silent ghost of Julian, my son who died in childhood, a hidden grief that makes me cling to Chloe with desperate hands. My routine is fixed. I spend hours in the library, tracing old ledger books to feel relevant in a digital era. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me. Please comment below and let me know which city you are watching from today. Note that while this story is based on real fraud, certain details are fictionalized for privacy and protection. I was sitting in my library on the morning of April 22, 2026, when I noticed something small but jarring on the mahogany desk Eleanor had gifted me for our 30th anniversary. Next to my leather-bound ledger lay a silver Mont Blanc pen I didn't recognize, its cap missing, and a faint smear of vibrant blue gel ink staining the blotter. I picked it up, and the sharp, synthetic scent of modern stationery hit me, clashing violently with the lingering ghost of Eleanor's rosemary perfume that still clings to these walls. It was a trivial thing, a misplaced tool, yet my heart stuttered. I wondered who had been sitting in my chair while I slept, using a pen I didn't own. Later that afternoon, while searching for my glasses in the kitchen drawer, I found a crumpled receipt from Vane & Associates Financial, dated just 2 days ago. It listed a consultation fee of $4,000, a withdrawal I hadn't authorized from the Sterling Towers Maintenance Fund. I tried to tell myself Chloe was simply handling a minor repair, yet the name Vane felt like a cold needle pressing against my temple. Chloe mentioned a Marcus as a mere junior analyst, but why was his firm's name on a receipt inside my private residence? The contradiction between her words and this paper created a hollow ache in my chest, a suspicion I couldn't yet name but could no longer ignore. On the night of April 24, 2026, at precisely 11:45 p.m., I waited until the heavy thud of Chloe's designer heels retreated to the west wing before I returned to my library. The silence of the Sterling estate felt like a physical weight, pressing against my ribcage as I clicked on the small green desk lamp. My hands, usually steady from years of handling architectural blueprints, trembled slightly as I reached for the bottom drawer. I found the 1998 Sterling Estate Blue folder hidden behind a stack of outdated tax returns from 2015. The folder felt unusually heavy, and as I opened it, the sharp, artificial scent of freshly printed laser ink burned my nostrils, masking the rosemary. I began comparing my handwritten ledgers with the digital printouts Chloe had provided last month, specifically focusing on the Sterling Trust account, ending in 4402. My eyes burned as I traced the columns, discovering a series of wire transfers totaling $2.1 million that had vanished over the last 18 months. Each transaction was disguised as structural maintenance for the Sterling Towers, but I knew those buildings were in pristine condition. My stomach churned with a cold, oily dread when I realized the authorization dates matched the afternoons I had spent sleeping off the heavy herbal teas Chloe insisted I drink for my agitated nerves. I wasn't just losing my legacy. I was being sedated to facilitate my own ruin. Deep within the blue folder, I pulled out a document titled Supplementary Deed of Gift, allegedly signed by Eleanor on May 12, 2024. I stared at her signature, the graceful loops of the E and the sharp cross of the T looking exactly as I remembered. However, a wave of nausea hit me when I held the paper up to the light. The watermark on the bond paper was from a manufacturer that only started production in early 2025. Chloe had been so arrogant in her forgery that she used paper that didn't even exist when my wife was alive. The realization that my daughter had spent months practicing a dead woman's handwriting made the library feel like a tomb. The following morning, I contacted Elias Thorne, the 74-year-old veteran notary who had witnessed every major contract of my career. We met at the Iron Whisk, a quiet diner on 42nd Street where the smell of burnt toast and cheap grease provided a shield against Chloe's prying eyes. Elias looked older than he had at the failed signing ceremony, his face etched with a grim determination that mirrored my own. He leaned across the scratched laminate table, sliding a leather briefcase toward me with a rhythmic tap of his fingers. He had spent the last 48 hours digging through the public records office, and what he found was a second, even deeper layer of betrayal. Elias pulled out a certified copy of a marriage license from Clark County, Nevada, dated October 14, 2023. My vision blurred as I read the names: Chloe Elizabeth Vance and Marcus Vane. The man I believed was merely a junior analyst, the person Chloe introduced as a professional necessity to help manage our declining assets, was actually my son-in-law. They had been married in secret for nearly 3 years, creating a legal partnership designed to strip the Sterling estate bare from the inside out. This wasn't just a daughter's greed, it was a coordinated siege. Marcus wasn't managing my money. He was filtering it into offshore accounts I could never hope to trace alone. Elias lowered his voice, his eyes darting toward the diner's entrance as he revealed that the conspiracy extended beyond the family. He discovered that the branch manager at our local bank had received a $450,000 consultation fee from Vane and Associates shortly after the primary trust was liquidated. It became clear that Chloe had built a fortress of corruption, paying off the very people I trusted to protect my interests. My own staff, the ones Chloe had recently hired to replace my loyal workers, were likely informants reporting my every move. I felt like a prisoner in the Sterling Towers, surrounded by paid actors who were simply waiting for the final act of my erasure. My blood turned to ice when Elias presented the final document he had retrieved from a contact at St. Jude's Hospital. It was a medical history report I had never authorized, dated August 2025, which claimed I was suffering from progressive cognitive decline and intermittent delusional episodes. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Chloe was building a legal case to have me declared incompetent and moved to a high-security assisted living facility. She had been documenting my confused moments she had carefully manufactured by moving my belongings and gaslighting me daily. The walls of the diner seemed to close in as I realized the extent of the trap. She wasn't just stealing my wealth. She was stealing my mind. I returned home that evening, moving with the practiced grace of a man who spent his life navigating treacherous construction sites. I had to play the role of the frail father while my mind raced with the logistical details of a counterstrike. As I climbed the grand staircase, I noticed a tiny, blinking red light hidden inside the ornate crown molding of the library door. A hidden camera. Chloe wasn't just waiting for me to sign papers. She was recording my every movement, hoping to capture a single moment of weakness for court evidence. I wondered how long she had been watching me, and what else she had hidden in the shadows of my own home. The final blow came when I found a digitized copy of a Do Not Resuscitate order buried in a hidden partition of Chloe's laptop. The signature at the bottom was a perfect replica of my own, dated just last week. My own daughter had signed my death warrant, ensuring that if I had a medical emergency, no doctor would be allowed to save me. This discovery left me breathless, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Now, I have to ask you something very important before I move to the next part of this investigation. Do you believe a parent should always forgive their child, no matter the crime? Type yes or no in the comments below. On the morning of April 27, 2026, Elias Thorne and I met in the basement of the old courthouse, away from the digital eyes Chloe had installed in my home. We pored over the digital trail left by Marcus Vane's offshore shell company, Vane Cayman Holdings, which was registered at 112 Harbor Lane. We discovered that 3 of my long-term tenants at Sterling Towers had been intimidated into signing new leases that redirected their monthly $45,000 rent payments directly into a private account. The network was broader than we feared. Even the building's chief of security, a man named Robert Halloway, was receiving secret bonuses to ignore unauthorized access to the main vault. The realization that my own security team was compromised made every shadow in the Sterling estate feel like a predator. Chloe had systematically fired my loyal staff, replacing them with associates who monitored my phone calls and restricted my visits from old friends. One specific hire, a woman named Janet Sachs who claimed to be a professional nutritionist, was actually a disgraced nurse with a history of medical negligence. I found her credentials hidden in a discarded folder, revealing she had been paid a $12,000 signing bonus by Chloe to manage my medication schedule. This wasn't healthcare. It was a curated isolation strategy designed to keep me mentally fogged and legally unreachable. My investigation took a terrifying turn when Sarah Miller, the only new maid who seemed genuinely kind, approached me while cleaning the attic on April 28th. She handed me a crumpled document she had retrieved from the shredder bin in Chloe's home office, her hands shaking with visible fear. It was a revised life insurance policy for $10 million, listing Chloe as the sole beneficiary with a double indemnity clause for accidental death. The policy was dated March 10, 2026, and my signature at the bottom was a chillingly accurate forgery. Finding this document made the air in the house feel toxic, as I realized my life was worth more to Chloe as a claim. Chloe began to sense my subtle shifts in behavior, and the psychological pressure she applied became a suffocating weapon. During dinner on April 29th, she watched me with predatory intensity while I pushed my plate of untouched salmon around. She mentioned that she had contacted Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to Elias, about my increasingly aggressive paranoia and my obsession with old paperwork. She was laying the groundwork for a forced psychiatric evaluation at the Willow Ridge Sanitarium, a facility known for its restrictive patient rights. I had to maintain my mask of frailty, pretending to forget my own middle name while my mind calculated the exact seconds I had to escape her gaze. The risk became physical when I caught a glimpse of Marcus Vane standing in the dimly lit hallway outside my library at 2 a.m. He wasn't the polished advisor I had seen in public. He looked like a common thief, holding a digital scanner used for duplicating physical keys. I realized they were planning to move the remaining physical gold reserves from the Sterling family vault, worth approximately $3.4 million, before the month ended. Marcus looked directly at the library door, his expression one of bored contempt, as if my very existence was a minor logistical hurdle he was eager to clear. I stayed frozen in the darkness, my heart pounding, realizing they were now operating with lethal impunity. Living under the same roof as my potential murderers turned every meal into a high-stakes performance of survival. Chloe would often help me up the stairs, her grip on my arm tight enough to leave faint bruises, while whispering about the beautiful gardens at Willow Ridge. She was gaslighting me with professional precision, moving my keys to the freezer or hiding my glasses in the oven to document my confusion for the court. I had to record these incidents in a tiny notebook I kept hidden inside the lining of Eleanor's old gardening coat. The tension between knowing their crimes and pretending to be their victim was a slow, agonizing poison that eroded my remaining strength. On May 1st, 2026, I finally accessed the encrypted files on the laptop Chloe left unattended for exactly 6 minutes. I found a detailed transition schedule that mapped out the liquidation of my entire life's work over the next 14 days. The most horrifying discovery was a series of emails between Chloe and a crooked lawyer named Simon Graves, discussing the final medical event that would trigger the Do Not Resuscitate order. They weren't just waiting for me to fade away. They were discussing the dosage of my herbal tea needed to induce a cardiac event that would appear natural to an overworked coroner. The paper trail of my planned demise was laid out in cold efficiency. The realization that my own daughter was calculating the cost of my funeral while I was still breathing made my soul feel hollow. I discovered that she had already sold Eleanor's heirloom jewelry, pieces I had intended to pass down to future grandchildren, to a private collector in Zurich for $800,000. Each layer of betrayal was more surgical than the last, aimed directly at the things I held most sacred. My legacy was being dismantled piece by piece, and my home was now a fortress of lies where even the walls seemed to whisper about my impending disappearance. I was no longer a father. I was merely a line item in a spreadsheet they were ready to delete. The final proof I needed came from a hidden recording device Elias Thorne helped me plant in the sunroom, capturing a conversation that shattered my heart. I heard Chloe's voice, devoid of any warmth, telling Marcus that she couldn't wait to finally be rid of the old man's smell and his endless stories about Sterling Towers. She laughed when Marcus suggested they might need to accelerate the timeline if I kept asking questions about the banking passwords. What you are about to hear next is the most disturbing part of this entire betrayal, and it might be difficult to stomach. If you are sensitive to themes of elder abuse, you may want to stop watching now. My trembling fingers navigated to a password-protected folder labeled Archives 2024 on Chloe's encrypted drive, using my late wife's birthday as the final desperate key. Inside, I found a scanned autopsy report for Eleanor that had never been shared with the family or the insurance companies. The document, signed by a private coroner Marcus had hired, revealed traces of the same concentrated digitalis found in the herbal teas I was currently drinking. My breath hitched as I realized Eleanor didn't die from a natural stroke. She was the first victim of this calculated chemical execution. This wasn't just a financial takeover anymore. It was a cold-blooded serial assassination, hiding behind filial devotion and expensive black funeral dresses. The blood drained from my face so rapidly that I had to grip the mahogany desk to keep from collapsing onto the floor. A cold, metallic sweat broke out across my forehead, and my vision fractured into jagged shards of white light and crushing shadows. Every memory of Chloe weeping at the cemetery now felt like a serrated blade twisting in my gut, transforming her grief into a disgusting performance of predatory patience. I felt my stomach heave, the bitter taste of that morning's poisoned tea rising in my throat as the magnitude of her evil finally registered. My own daughter had turned our home into a slaughterhouse, treating her parents like livestock to be harvested for equity. Images of Eleanor's final day flooded back with agonizing clarity, highlighting the subtle clues I had been too blinded by love to notice then. I remembered Chloe insisting on being the only one to bring her mother water, her eyes darting toward the clock with a clinical precision I misinterpreted as worry. Eleanor had complained about a fluttering heart and a numb jaw, symptoms I now recognize as the slow onset of cardiac toxicity, not a random stroke. I recalled the way Chloe had cleared the bedside table before the paramedics arrived, her movements frantic yet systematic as she disposed of the evidence. Our entire past was a lie, a fraud orchestrated by a monster I helped raise. I wiped the sweat from my eyes and stood tall, the trembling in my hands replaced by a cold, industrial resolve that had built Sterling Towers. I was no longer a grieving widower or a fragile father. I was the architect of her impending destruction, ready to tear down the house she tried to steal. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing Eleanor's garden shears, finding strength in the steel she once held with love. Before I reveal the final trap I set for my own daughter, I need to know you are still with me in this darkness. Are you ready to see this confrontation through to the end? Comment, "I am here," below. On the morning of May 4th, 2026, I sat in the grand dining room of Sterling Towers, the air smelling of furniture polish and betrayal. I had arranged the 1998 blue folder on the table like a sacrificial altar. Chloe entered, accompanied by Marcus Vane, both wearing the smug confidence of vultures about to feast. What they didn't know was that Detective Miller and 2 officers from the Precinct 12 Financial Crimes Unit were stationed behind the double oak doors, their recording equipment capturing every vibration of the room. I held the $15 million power of attorney document, my hand intentionally shaking to bait the trap. Chloe leaned in, her fake smile as cold as a morgue slab. "Chloe, before I sign, I need to know why your mother's signature appears on a deed dated 4 months after her funeral," I whispered, sliding the forgery across the table. Her face didn't break. She simply sighed with a practiced, condescending pity. "Dad, you're having another episode. Your dementia is making you see ghosts in the paperwork," she replied, her voice smooth as oiled silk. Marcus stepped forward, his hand reaching for the folder while he spoke about the necessity of my immediate transfer to Willow Ridge Sanitarium. They were so certain of my mental decline that they didn't even notice the red tally light on the hidden bookshelf camera. I didn't flinch when I pulled out the Clark County marriage certificate and the secret autopsy report Elias Thorne had retrieved. The room turned into an icebox as I read the traces of digitalis found in Eleanor's system. "You didn't just steal $2.1 million from the Sterling Trust, Chloe. You murdered your mother and were currently brewing my final cup of tea," I stated, my voice echoing with a granite-hard authority. Marcus turned to flee, but the double doors burst open, and Detective Miller stepped into the light, his badge gleaming like a star. The predatory vultures were suddenly cornered, their carefully constructed fortress of lies crumbling under the weight of forensic truth. Chloe's polished facade finally shattered, her face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "You think you're so noble, Arthur, but you were always obsessed with your towers while I was just a shadow," she screamed, her voice cracking the silence of the hall. She confessed to every wire transfer, every forged check, and the plan to liquidate the estate to pay Marcus's $4.5 million gambling debts. She laughed hysterically, claiming Eleanor was a weak woman who loved a dead son more than her living daughter. Every word was a serrated blade, but every word was also a nail in the coffin of her own legal defense. Detective Miller didn't hesitate, slamming Chloe against the mahogany table and clicking the heavy steel handcuffs onto her wrists. He began reading her the Miranda rights in a rhythmic, merciless monotone, while Marcus was pinned to the floor by 2 uniformed officers. The neighbors watched through the tall glass windows as the prestigious Chloe Vance was led out of Sterling Towers in disgrace, her designer suit wrinkled and her legacy erased. The $3.4 million in gold reserves were secured, and the crooked bank manager was arrested simultaneously across town. I watched from the balcony, feeling the heavy weight of 40 years of fatherhood finally lifting, replaced by a hollow, chilling justice. The legal fallout was swift and absolute. By September 2026, Chloe was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder and systemic grand larceny. Marcus Vane received 15 years for his role in the racketeering conspiracy, and his financial licenses were permanently revoked by the state board. Every cent of the $2.1 million was ordered to be returned to the Sterling Trust, though no amount of money could replace the 2 years of life I lost to their greed. As I watched the sun set over my towers, I saw Elias Thorne nodding from the driveway, a silent witness to the fact that while blood is thick, truth is the only thing that endures. It has been exactly 8 months since the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked in the grand hall of Sterling Towers, My life is now a sanctuary of quiet reconstruction, where the smell of fresh rosemary from Eleanor's restored garden has finally replaced the synthetic scent of deceit. I established the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Elder Protection, ensuring no other architect of industry is dismantled by their own blood. Every morning at 5, I still brew 2 cups of coffee, but now I drink mine while watching the sunrise hit the steel beams of my tallest tower. This house remains quiet, but it is a peaceful, honest silence that carries no hidden cameras or poisoned promises today. I look at you now, across this digital divide, and I wonder if you are as blinded by love as I once was. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that the parasite of greed can liquefy even the strongest family bond. Scripture tells us to honor our father and mother, yet it also promises that the truth shall set us free, even when it burns. If you have parents who spent decades building a foundation, do not try to tear the house down while they are still inside. Please comment, share, and subscribe to keep the truth alive. Note: this story is for entertainment. Consult professionals for real legal or medical advice.